In the previous part of the Dance of the Dragons, we reached the first truly major clash between the Blacks and the Greens. Both sides suffered heavy losses, but the Blacks seemed to bleed more. Lucerys Valerian and his dragon Arax were dead. Houses Darklyn and Staunton were crushed, and Rhaenys and Meleys fell in battle. The Greens appeared to lose less, yet their losses were still severe. King Aegon II and Sunfire were grievously wounded and unable to fight. Queen Helaena, herself a dragon rider, sank into madness after the death of Prince Jaehaerys. Meanwhile, the Regent Aemond and the Hand of the King, Sir Criston Cole, had begun their march toward Harrenhal to face Daemon. What happens next? Now we continue into the next chapter of the Dance of the Dragons. 9. The Blacks' New Dragon Riders. With Sunfire too badly injured to fly and his rider lying half dead in pain, and with Tessarion and Prince Daeron still in Old Town, King's Landing now had only 2 dragons guarding it: Dreamfire, bonded to Queen Helaena, and Vhagar, ridden by Prince Aemond. But Helena's descent into madness meant Dreamfire could no longer be relied upon in war, for a dragon without a rider's command is almost never a weapon on the battlefield. No dragon could truly match Vhagar in size and battle experience. Yet Prince Jacaerys reasoned that if Vermax, Syrax, and Caraxes attacked together, victory might be possible. All 3 were large and fierce, and even Vhagar could not fight 3 at once. Still, caution ruled his mind. To be certain Vhagar could be brought down, Jacaerys decided the Blacks needed more than 3 dragons. So Jacaerys issued a proclamation across Dragonstone. Anyone who could mount one of the 6 riderless dragons on the island would be granted lands, wealth, and a knight's title. Their sons would be raised to nobility, their daughters would be wed to lords, and the rider themselves would earn the honor of fighting at Jacaerys' side against the usurper Aegon II. Not only small folk answered the call, soldiers and knights came as well, even Sir Steffon Darklyn. But these were dragons, not horses. They did not easily accept a stranger on their backs. When angered or threatened, they struck back. 16 died attempting the claim. Nearly 50 were burned or maimed. Sir Steffon Darklyn was burned alive trying to mount Sea Smoke. Lord Gorman Massey met the same fate with Vermithor. A man called Dennis the Silver lost an arm to Sheep Stealer, and when his sons rushed forward to stanch the bleeding, the cannibal appeared and devoured father and sons alike. In the end, Sea Smoke, Vermithor, and Silverwing accepted new riders. Vermithor accepted a blacksmith's bastard, a man called Hugh the Hammer, also known as Hard Hugh. A soldier named Ulf managed to ride Silverwing. Sea Smoke, once ridden by Sir Laenor Valerian, accepted a new rider as well, a 15-year-old boy named Adam of Hull, another Valerian bastard. After Adam claimed Sea Smoke, Lord Corlys Valerian begged Queen Rhaenyra to legitimize him and strip away his bastard name, and so he became Sir Adam Valerian, heir to Driftmark. 3 wild dragons remained unclaimed, and it seemed no one sane wished to try again. Sheepstealer, hatched while King Jaehaerys I was still young, often flew from sheepfold to feed, earning the name that all of Westeros knew. Grey Ghost haunted the shores of the narrow sea, fishing in silence. Pale gray-white of scale, he seemed to vanish into fog and shunned the presence of men. And then there was the cannibal, the largest and most vicious of the 3, so named because he fed on the carcasses of dead dragons and lurked around Dragonstone's hatcheries to devour hatchlings and eggs. Many tried to tame him. His lair was piled high with their bones. None dared approach the cannibal, and anyone foolish enough to try never returned. Some attempted Grey Ghost, but he evaded them all. Sheepstealer might have seemed easier until you understood what he was: cunning, foul-tempered, and deadly. He had killed more would-be riders than the other 3 tameable dragons combined. One man who hoped to claim him after failing to find Grey Ghost was Alan of Hull, Adam's younger brother. Sheepstealer did not accept him. The dragon blasted him with flame. Only his outer cloak caught fire, and Sir Adam, on Sea Smoke, had to drive Sheepstealer away for Alan to escape. Many before Alan had tried to climb onto Sheepstealer's back. all ended in the dragon's belly. Yet in the end, Sheepstealer did accept a rider, through the stubborn courage and cunning of a 16-year-old girl named Nettles. Every morning she brought him a freshly killed sheep, again and again, until the dragon grew used to her scent and presence. Dark-haired and brown-eyed, small of frame, rough of speech but fearless, she became Sheepstealer's first rider, and his last. Thus, the Blacks were strengthened by 4 new battle-ready dragons. Jacaerys had achieved his goal, and he moved to set in motion his plan to strike at King's Landing. The day he chose was the first full moon of 130 AC. 10. The Battle of the Gullet. But man proposes and the gods dispose. Just as Jacaerys prepared to attack, word came from the east. 90 ships from Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys, answering the call of Sir Otto Hightower, were sailing straight for the Gullet. A Pentashi convoy carrying Rhaenyra's 2 young sons, Princes Aegon and Viserys, across the narrow sea was intercepted by the war fleet. Prince Aegon tried to reach the dragon Stormcloud, clinging to the beast's neck in desperate hope of flight, but he failed. Stormcloud was struck again and again by spears and arrows in the throat. A poisoned lance dealt the killing blow. Yet the dragon still managed, by sheer will, to carry Aegon out of immediate danger before dying. Viserys was not so fortunate. He tried to hide his identity, concealing his dragon egg and dressing in rags, but he was recognized anyway and taken hostage. Then Jacaerys arrived on Vermax, plunging into the enemy fleet. A storm of arrows and spears rose to greet him. These sailors had faced Daemon and Caraxes before. They knew how to fight dragons. "Kill the rider and the dragon will flee," captains and commanders screamed to their men. Vermax still dove in, breathing fire. One ship ignited, then another, then another. Yet the men of the free cities fought on, until screaming began from other decks and all eyes turned upward. More wings were coming from Dragonstone. This time, the Triarchy did not face 1 dragon, but 5. Silverwing, Sheepstealer, Seasmoke, and Vermithor filled the sky above the fleet. Panic spread like plague as the enemy realized they were trapped beneath 5 dragons at once. Line after line of ships burned. Some turned to flee, others splintered, others sank into a sea of flame. Soldiers screamed across the waters as towering columns of smoke rose over the Gullet. The free cities were on the edge of defeat, until Vermax flew too low and slammed into the sea. Many tales tried to explain how it happened. Some swore an archer put an arrow through the dragon's eye, though the story echoed too closely the old legend of Meraxes in Dorne. Others claimed Vermax skimmed past a Myrish ship designed with iron grappling hooks along its sides. One hook snagged between 2 scales. With the dragon's speed and the ship's weight, it tore a long, deep wound across Vermax's belly. The dragon's shriek carried for miles as Vermax struck the water, thrashing and howling. Survivors said Vermax struggled to rise, only to crash into a burning ship. The charred mast fell, entangling the dragon. And as the ship sank, Vermax sank with it. Jacaerys escaped the impact and fought his way to the surface. He swam to a floating plank, clinging to it as he tried to gather his strength, until crossbowmen on a Myrish vessel spotted him and began to fire. He managed to ward off the first bolts, but more and more men rushed to the rail. Then a single arrow struck him in the throat, and Jacaerys Velaryon vanished beneath the black water. So ended the naval battle of the Gullet, one of the bloodiest sea fights in the history of Westeros. Of the 90 warships of the 3 free cities, only 28 returned. But the attackers were not finished. They bypassed Dragonstone and struck at Driftmark itself. Spicetown was butchered. Men, women, and children left dead in the streets as food for gulls. The buildings burned to ash. The town was never rebuilt. High Tide was set aflame. The sea snake's treasures, brought from the distant east, were swallowed by fire, and his servants were slaughtered as they tried to flee. The power of the Valyrian fleet was reduced to 1/3 of what it had once been. Thousands died in that carnage. But the cruelest blow was the death of Jacaerys Velaryon, heir to Queen Rhaenyra's Iron Throne. Isha, the Battle of the Honey Wine. 2 weeks after the slaughter in the Gullet, in the Reach, Lord Ormond Hightower's army was suddenly encircled by two black armies. From the north came Lord Thaddeus Rowan and Tom Flowers, a bastard of Bitterbridge, with many knights, while Sir Alan Beesbury, Lord Alan Tarley, and Lord Owen Costane cut off Ormond's retreat as he tried to fall back toward Old Town. As the armies converged along the banks of the Honeywine, Ormond saw death closing in. Defeat seemed certain, until a shadow swept over the battlefield and the thunderous roar drowned out the ring of steel. A blue dragon descended, Tessarion, the Blue Queen, bearing on her back Prince Daeron Targaryen, only 15 years old, and Ormond's own squire. Daeron and Tessarion's sudden arrival transformed everything. Soldiers who had been fleeing moments before turned back with renewed fury, cursing and screaming as they hurled themselves at the enemy. By day's end, Lord Rowan was forced to retreat north with what remained of his host. Tom Flowers was burned to death and left among the reeds. Sir Alan and Lord Alan were taken captive. Lord Costane lay dying from a mortal wound. The dead were left for wolves and crows. Lord Hightower celebrated with Daeron and knighted him with House Hightower's Valyrian sword, Vigilance, granting him the name Sir Daeron the Daring. The prince answered humbly, "My lord is kind to say so, but the victory belongs to Tessarion." On Dragonstone, despair swept through the blacks when news of Honeywine arrived. Lord Bar Emmon even suggested the time had come to kneel to Aegon II. But Queen Rhaenyra would not hear it. Not anymore. Only the gods could fully understand a woman's heart, especially the heart of a mother who had lost 2 sons and seen another taken hostage. Jacaerys's death hardened her. No tears remained, only rage and hatred. She still had more dragons than her brother, and she swore she would use them at any cost. She vowed to burn Aegon and all who supported him alive. She told her followers she would either tear Aegon from the Iron Throne or die trying. 12. The Queen's Plan. At this moment, with Aegon II incapacitated, Aemond wanted to crush Daemon and the River Lords gathered at Harrenhal at once. He raised forces and announced his intent to strike. Some Greens were uneasy, but Aemond had the backing of the Hand, Sir Criston Cole, and Sir Tywland Lannister. Grand Maester Orwyle urged him to send ravens to Storm's End to secure Baratheon's strength. Lord Jasper Wilde advised summoning Lord Hightower and Prince Daeron from the south. The Dowager Queen Alicent was more cautious still, urging him to wait for Aegon II and Sunfire to recover. Aemond had no patience for delay. He did not need his siblings or their dragons. Aegon was too broken, Daeron too young. Yes, Caraxes was a fearsome, savage, cunning beast with many wars behind him. But Vhagar was older, deadlier, and twice as large. And Aemond's will could not be challenged. Until Aegon II could rise and take up a sword again, all power belonged to Aemond. 2 weeks later, he flew from King's Landing to Harrenhal, with 4,000 soldiers marching behind him. Daemon Targaryen was older now and less eager to personally lead battles. At that moment, he was sitting atop Harrenhal's walls. Yet he still had friends in King's Landing. When word came that Aemond was marching, Daemon smiled and said, "At last," for he had waited a long time for this. Elsewhere, Lord Wallace Mouton rode out from Maidenpool with hundreds of knights. He joined forces with Lord Crabbe, the Bruins of Crackclaw Point, and House Celtigar of Claw Isle, then marched on Rook's Rest. Moving swiftly through misty forests and hills, they fell upon the king's men and reclaimed the castle. Then Mouton led his bravest into the ash-strewn field west of the walls to finish off Sunfire. It should have been easy. They overcame the men tasked with feeding and guarding the dragon. But Sunfire proved far more vicious than Mouton expected. On the ground, with his left wing broken, Sunfire looked pitiable, something half dead. Instead, he was sleeping, and the clash of steel, the thunder of hundreds of horses, and the first spear thrust only enraged him. Caked in mud, surrounded by sheep bones, Sunfire lashed with his tail, then bathed the attackers in flame as he tried to rise into the air. 3 times he tried to take flight, 3 times he crashed back down. Mouton's men hacked with swords, spears, and axes, opening wounds across the dragon's body. But every strike only fed Sunfire's fury. 60 men died before the rest fled. Lord Mouton himself was among the dead. When his brother Manfred found the body 2 weeks later, little remained but a blackened mass of flesh inside melted armor, crawling with maggots. The field was strewn with corpses, men and hundreds of horses. But Sunfire was gone. No trace remained. Perhaps he managed to fly again, but where he went, none could say. Meanwhile, in the Riverlands, Daemon quickly flew south on Caraxes, keeping to the western shore of the God's Eye to avoid Aemon's army. He headed straight for Blackwater Bay and King's Landing. On Dragonstone, Queen Rhaenyra donned armor, mounted Syrax, and flew for Blackwater Bay as well. The two met above Aegon's high hill. Below, the people of King's Landing panicked at the sight of 2 dragons. They knew the city had almost no defense. Nearly all soldiers had marched with Aemond and Criston to Harrenhal, and Vhagar had gone with them. Only Dreamfire remained among the great dragons, and Dreamfire's rider, Helaena, was broken. No dragon stood ready to protect the capital. Thousands poured out through the gates, carrying children and whatever they could strap to their backs, seeking safety beyond the walls. Some dug deep pits and tunnels, preparing to hide if the city burned. Chaos erupted in Flea Bottom, and when the Sea Snake's ships appeared from the east of Blackwater Bay, the city's fear turned to true hysteria. Dozens died before the city watch restored order. Dowager Queen Alicent ordered the city sealed and defended at once. She commanded Grand Maester Orwyle to send ravens to Aemond and the other Green Lords, urging them to return and protect the capital. Orwyle barely reached his chambers before 4 men of the city watch were waiting. One threw a sack over his head, while the others beat and bound him. The Grand Maester was dragged to the dungeons. Other messengers sent by Alicent were seized before they could even reach the gates. 7 commanders of the 7 gates, men sworn to King Aegon, were arrested or killed as Caraxes appeared above the Red Keep. For the city watch still remembered who had once led them, Daemon Targaryen, the man who had given them their gold cloaks. Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain Hightower, deputy commander of the watch, ran to the stables to raise the alarm, only to be surrounded by his own men. Disarmed, he was brought to his superior, Luthor Largent. When Gawain called Largent a turncloak, Largent only laughed. "Daemon gave us these cloaks," he said, "and no matter how you turn them, they're still gold." Then he drove his sword into Sir Gawain's belly and ordered the gates opened for the Sea Snake's soldiers to pour into the city. King's Landing fell in less than a day. A short, brutal fight erupted at the River Gate, where 13 Hightower knights and hundreds of soldiers held the watch at bay for 8 to 9 hours. They fought fiercely against enemies within and beyond the walls. But their courage became meaningless when Rhaenyra's forces flooded in through the other 6 gates. When they saw Rhaenyra's dragon wheeling above the Red Keep, they fled, or fell to their knees and swore fealty to the queen. More dragons arrived. Sheepstealer landed on Visenya's hill. Silverwing and Vermithor settled on Rhaenys's hill and outside the dragon pit. Daemon circled the Red Keep on Caraxes before landing. Only after the city was secured did Rhaenyra descend. Adam Valerian, on Seasmoke, patrolled the walls, warning any would-be rebels that fire would answer rebellion. With every defense broken, Alicent withdrew into Maegor's Holdfast with her father, Sir Otto Hightower, Sir Tywin Lannister, and Lord Jasper Wilde. Larys Strong, the Master of Whisperers, had vanished without a trace. Alicent tried to speak with Rhaenyra. "Let us convene the small council," she pleaded, as King Jaehaerys once did, and place the matter of succession before the lords of the realm. Rhaenyra refused. "We both know what you would do," she answered. Then she offered her stepmother a choice: surrender or burn. Alicent bowed her head in defeat and handed over the keys to the castle, ordering her knights and soldiers to lay down their arms. "This city is yours, princess," she said, "but you will not hold it long. The rats come out when the cat is gone, but my son Aemond will return with fire and blood." Rhaenyra ordered the Red Keep searched. Her men found the Mad Queen Helaena and locked her away. But when they broke into the king's chambers, Aegon II was gone. King Aegon II had fled with his daughter Jaehaera and his son Maelor. 2 Kingsguard, Sir Willis Fell and Sir Rickard Thorne, had vanished as well. Even Alicent did not know where they had gone. Rhaenyra refused to wait any longer. She entered the throne room, had torches lit, climbed the steps, one by one, and sat the Iron Throne, where her father and the kings of House Targaryen had once sat. Still wearing armor, she took the highest seat of the 7 kingdoms. Everyone in the hall knelt, begging pardon and swearing loyalty to Queen Rhaenyra. The ceremony lasted into the night. At dawn, she rose and descended. Daemon had to escort her from the hall. Cuts were found on her legs and palms. Drops of blood marked the path where she walked. And no one dared speak aloud the truth. The Iron Throne had rejected her, and that meant her reign would not be long. Back in the Riverlands, after 19 days of marching, Aemond and Sir Criston reached Harrenhal, only to find the gates wide open. Daemon and his men were long gone. Aemond still had Vhagar and 4,000 soldiers, and he expected some sudden trap. Daemon and Caraxes striking without warning. But nothing came. They celebrated victory. "Daemon and the Riverlands scum fled rather than face me," Aemond declared. Then the news arrived. King's Landing had fallen. Aemond realized his uncle had made a fool of him, sweetly, perfectly, and rage consumed him. 13. The Bloody Lakeshore and the Death of the Kingmaker. Yet west of Harrenhal, war still raged between Riverlords and the Lannister host. With Jason Lannister dead, command fell to a weak man, Lord Lefford. He slowed the march, and near the western shore of the God's Eye, his army was blocked. Roddy Dustin and his Winter Wolves, 2,000 fierce northern fighters, had ridden south and joined Lord Forrest Frey and Robb Rivers. Frey brought 800 men, 200 knights, and 600 foot. Robb Rivers brought 300 archers. They struck Lefford's northern flank, while to the south, forces from the Lords Bigglestone, Chambers, and Perrin appeared. Attacked from 2 sides, Lefford withdrew toward the riverbank to form a defense and sent dozens of ravens to Harrenhal to beg Aemond for aid. Not a single raven escaped. All were shot down by Robb Rivers, said to be the finest archer in Westeros. More Riverlords gathered, led by Ser Garibald Grey, Lord John Charlton, and Benjicot Blackwood, an 11-year-old boy. "Best we finish these lions before the dragon comes," Roddy Dustin said. And so, the bloodiest land battle of the dance began the next day at sunrise. It would be remembered as the Lakeshore, and by another name as well, the Fish Feed. Assailed from 3 directions, the Westermen were driven down toward the shores of the God's Eye. Hundreds died fighting in the reeds, hundreds more drowned trying to flee. By nightfall, thousands were dead, including men of high name, Lords Frey, Lefford, Biggleston, Charlton, Swift, Rain, Sir Clarent Crakehall, Sir Tyler Hill. The Lannister host was annihilated. Young Benjicot Blackwood stood weeping before mountains of corpses. The North suffered the worst losses, for Roddy Dustin's Winter Wolves had demanded the vanguard, and 5 times they charged into Lannister spear lines. 2/3 of Dustin's men were killed or wounded. At Harrenhal, Aemond and Sir Criston Cole argued over how to answer the Riverlands. Harrenhal was hard to besiege, and the enemy feared Vhagar. Yet Aemond's own men were running out of food. Horses grew hungry and sick. Around the castle, fields and villages lay burned and empty. Sir Criston urged them to turn south, where Aegon's supporters were strongest. Aemond refused. "Only cowards run," he said. The fall of King's Landing, and Daemon's cruel trick, had enraged him. When word came of the Lannister slaughter at Fishfeed, Aemond was so furious he nearly cut down the young squire who delivered the news. He wanted to strike King's Landing at once, believing no dragon could stand against Vhagar. Sir Criston called it stupidity. "A fight of 1 against 6 is for fools, my prince," he said. He begged Aemond to march south and join Lord Ormond and Prince Daeron, where Tessarion still flew. Aegon II had fled King's Landing. Perhaps the king in Sunfire had recovered and could join them. Loyalists in the city might yet free Helena, so she could ride Dreamfire to war. 4 dragons against 6 could succeed, especially with Vhagar among them. But Aemond refused, calling it a plan for cowards. In the end, they agreed to split. Sir Criston Cole would lead a host south to join Ormond and Daeron. Aemon would wage war in his own way, burning traitors from the sky. Sooner or later, Rhaenyra would send 1 or 2 dragons to stop him, and he believed Vhagar would kill them. "She dares not send them all," Aemon said, "or King's Landing will be left without dragons. She dares not risk Syrax, nor her last son. They may call Rhaenyra a queen, but in the end, she is still a woman." So Aemon's forces divided and marched in 2 different directions. Back in the Red Keep, Queen Rhaenyra rewarded her allies and punished those who had served her brother. She placed bounties on the usurper Aegon II, on his daughter Jaehaera, his son Maelor, the false knights Willis Fell and Rickard Thorne, and on Larys Strong. When bounties failed, she sent hunters to track them down and punished anyone who gave them aid. Alicent was chained at wrist and ankle with golden fetters, though Rhaenyra spared her life. "My father once loved you," she said. Sir Otto Hightower was not spared. The hand who had served 3 kings became the first to lose his head. Lord Jasper Wilde followed, dying still insisting a son had greater right than a daughter. Sir Tywin Lannister was tortured for the location of hidden treasure. Many small folk had never loved Aegon II or Aemond, and at first they welcomed the Queen's return. But love and hatred are 2 sides of the same coin. Soon, new heads appeared on spikes at the city gates each day. Taxes rose, coinage changed. The woman they once celebrated began to seem greedy and merciless. Some said she was as cruel as a king before her. They began to call her Maegor with teats, and the name spread through the city like wildfire. With the city, the castle, and the Iron Throne in her grasp, guarded by 6 dragons, Rhaenyra felt secure enough to bring her sons to King's Landing. Dozens of ships arrived from Dragonstone carrying Aegon the Younger. Another ship came from Gulltown bearing Prince Joffrey, her last son by Laenor Velaryon, along with his dragon Tyraxes. Rhaenyra began planning to name Joffrey Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne. Drunk on victory, she no longer cared that she had little time left to reign. Each time she sat the Iron Throne, its blades cut her arms, palms, and legs, an omen of what was coming. Beyond the walls, war continued. In the Riverlands, Sir Criston Cole left Harrenhal and marched south along the God's Eye with 3,600 men. Some had already deserted. Aemon departed as well, flying wherever he pleased, raining dragonfire on fields and villages. House Derry was first to suffer. Farmers harvesting in the fields were burned or fled, leaving scorched earth behind. Derry's castle vanished into a sea of flame. Lady Derry and her son survived by hiding beneath the castle, but her husband and heir died in battle, along with 40 knights and many archers. 3 days later, the town of Lord Harroway smoked. Lord's Mill, Blackbuckle, Buckle, Claypool, Swinford, Spiderwood, all were swallowed by Vhagar's fire, until half the Riverlands was ash. Sir Criston marched through that same ruin. Smoke rose before and behind his army. Every village he reached was burned and abandoned. Everywhere he went, death lay thick. Horses, cattle, men, rotting, stinking, poisoning the water. 4 days after leaving Harrenhal, the attacks began. Archers hidden in the forest shot into Cole's column. Men died, others were dragged away and never seen again. Some fled, leaving shields and spears behind, or surrendered to the enemy. At Crossed Elms, dozens of Cole's men died to Riverland's traps, and that was only the prelude. The lords of the Trident had gathered their strength. When Sir Criston crossed the Blackwater Rush south of the God's Eye, he saw the Riverland's host waiting on the rocky rises. 300 horsemen, 3,000 archers, 3,000 spearmen, what remained of the winter wolves with iron hammers and swords, and above them, the dragon banner of Queen Rhaenyra snapping in the wind. Lord Roderick Dustin blew the war horn, and the river lords surged downhill as one, led by the winter wolves on horseback, with knights and riders close behind. When Sir Criston Cole was shot down and fell to the earth, the men who had followed him from Harrenhal broke. They fled in panic. The Riverland soldiers pursued and slew hundreds. And so ended Sir Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, hand of King Aegon II, and the man remembered forever as the Kingmaker. Here Part 3 comes to a close. Sir Criston Cole is dead, but the king he made, Aegon II, still lives somewhere in hiding. Storm's End under Lord Boros Baratheon still stands with Aegon's cause. House Lannister has been savaged. Casterly Rock and Lannisport are in turmoil, but they remain dangerous. Aemond and Vhagar are burning the Riverlands. Lord Ormond Hightower's army, with Prince Daeron and Tessarion, advances from the south. Yet Rhaenyra's advantage is far from small. She holds King's Landing, commands 6 fighting dragons, and still has the North and the Vale behind her. Their full strength has not yet been unleashed. The Riverlands are ravaged, but their men remain loyal. By the numbers, Rhaenyra is stronger than Aegon II, yet in war, nothing is certain. And so we look ahead to Part 4, where the war turns in ways no one can predict, and the balance of power begins to spin, violently, out of control.